Well, thank you, Mr. Blake, for agreeing to be interviewed about the Avengers. It is most kind of you.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
I just wanted to ask, for viewers that might want to know, how you began your musical journey to begin with, first of all, when you first realised you had an aptitude for music.
Well, I suppose it was quite early on. I remember writing a big march at the age of 9, and I wrote it out fully in ink, and I took it along to my piano teacher, and I said, "I've written this," and he said, it's very bad. Boys of your age to lie. He said, and I don't believe you could possibly have written that. You should be ashamed of yourself. So at that moment, another pupil came in, a lady, and he said, he claims to have written this. Give me the manuscript. He said, all right. He said, play it to us. So I played it perfectly from memory. And he said, my God, you did write it. Yeah. So that's my first memory of writing it, March in D. But then nobody really took much notice of me at school, which wasn't a very musical school. But I was fortunate to meet a very good piano teacher called Christine Pembridge, who studied with Harold Craxton, who taught Peter Katie. He was very good. So I got very good teaching as piano, and she put me in for a scholarship, the Hastings Festival Scholarship, which was awarded only every 3 years. And much to everybody's surprise, I won the scholarship, which was well, also won the Associated Board for the whole world, which was quite a surprise to everybody. And I was taken on by Harold Craxton, who was a sort of top piano professor at the academy. But I was also taken on for composition. I remember when I went to be interviewed, they said, what do you want to do as a second subject? And I said organ, because I played the organ quite a lot at that time. So I said, well, all right, so have you brought any harmony along? You're supposed to bring a bit of harmony along with you. Oh yes, I've got something. So I produced a sonata. Fully written sonata, and I wrote. They said, you wrote this? I said, so they looked at it. Do you want to play a bit of it? So I played it, and they said, well, why on earth aren't you studying composition? I said, I didn't know you could. This was sort of that, from out of town, didn't know the way. So I was given Howard Ferguson, who was their best piano teacher at that time, took me on, but only for a term, because I wrote a piece in the first term called Variations on a Theme of Bartok, which was one would think awkward thing to write variations. I wrote a huge number of variations on it, and Howard Ferguson declared it a masterpiece. But he took it along to put me in for a prize, and the board said, it's quite impossible that somebody in the first year could have written a thing like that. We don't believe you. So he said, well, in that case, I'm going to resign as a professor, which he did. So I never had a professor for composition all the time I was at the academy. But what happened instead was I got terribly interested in film. And instead of going to concerts every evening and listening to Scarlatti sonatas, I went along to the National Film Theatre and watched Humphrey Bogart, who I preferred. So, and I think that was really, I felt at that time, and I still do, that the combination of music and film is the great art form of the 20th and possibly 21st century. I think it has untold possibilities, a great many of which still haven't been discovered. But sometimes in some places they have by Disney was well on the way to doing so. I was very influenced by Disney, and lucky enough to meet Richard Williams, who was England's answer to Walt Disney at that time, and I did quite a lot of that led me to later to do quite a lot of animated film work, as for instance Grandpa, the Bear and the Snowman, which is now really very well established throughout the world. I'm waiting for the other two to catch up.
I'm sure they will. I mean, as you say, the music's relationship to film. If you see a film without music, and then you see it, it's the music that brings it to life, isn't it? Really.
It is. Yes. It is the emotional language of film, and it is quite remarkable what you can do. I remember experimenting with writing different scores. You can turn a piece of film from a beautiful love story into a hideous horror film just by the music. So the language, and people don't realise it, that because they were very often, they'll go and see a great film with a terrific score, and you say, what did you think of the music? And they said, was there any music? They don't hear it.
I suppose the music has to serve the story, so if you're listening to the music too much, then of course something might be going. It's more of a subtle thing, isn't it, that's going on. It shouldn't enhance it, but it shouldn't detract from the story.
That's absolutely correct. It should only. You're allowed to attract your attention when you've got the titles going up, because that isn't the film proper. That's the announcement. So you can do terrific music on the beginning and end titles, but sometimes in a film you can get a sequence that is really worth scoring, and I'm trying to think of an example, but you carry on. I'll come back to you.
Yeah. So I was wondering how the Avengers came into your life in the first place.
Well, I got to be friendly with Bernard Herrmann. I was introduced to Bernard Herrmann because he wanted some scoring done for the Bolting Brothers, and it was slightly. I saw he wanted a slightly jazz score, and he didn't write jazz, and so he took me on. I'd been recommended by Laurie Johnson and others that I could do that. So I did a couple of scores for him, and he was very pleased at that. And then he rang me one day, and he said, Laurie Johnson's asked me if I would take over and write the score of the Avengers. And well, the Avengers at that time was the biggest television show in the world. It's running in about 73 countries, and it was fated and repeat. They would be run and repeated. So it's a very big project, and I said, well, why don't you do it, Benny? And he said, I wouldn't have the faintest idea how to do it. I don't write jazz. Well, I said, no, not exactly jazz. It's jazzy, and it's. I do know how to write it because I've been playing piano, or more correctly, Hammond organ, electric piano, and Celeste on the Avengers session as a session musician. So I've been doing that for about 2 years. So I'd got to know Laurie Johnson's style. So I could more or less do it, and it sounded. I didn't give the game away, but everybody thought it was Laurie Johnson. So. But I do finally get the credit on the score, on the finished films of that period of the Avengers. I did 13 episodes, which is quite a lot, between 1968 and 1969. It's a very long time ago.
And Laurie Johnson is credited as being the music supervisor on your episodes.
Yes.
How much sort of input did he have on your work?
Well, he didn't have the time, is the answer to that, because he was putting on a musical in Drury Lane with Harry Sheehan called The Four Musketeers, and that was filling up all his time. I don't know what happened to it, but it came out. I don't think it did very much, but it meant that Laurie he just couldn't do both that and write the Avengers. So because I'd played him and knew his style, he was happy to hand the job over to me. So that was, of course, a big step up to be. I was then theoretically musical director at Elstree, which was their really big time show. So it was a very interesting thing to take on. And I remember actually sitting down to write I hadn't really written a full-scale score or a series, and I can remember sitting down and looking at the sheet of paper, and they said, we've got to record it. This was like a Tuesday. We've got to record it next Monday. And I thought, how on earth, I've got to get a theme that doesn't sound like somebody else's theme, but it also got to sound as if it's Laurie Johnson, and it's also got to sound like the Avengers, and it's also got to have tension, but it's also got a love interest. And I thought, how on earth do I do all that? And I actually thought, listen, Blake, you're being paid to do this. You'll just have to do the first thing that comes into your head and follow your instinct and write until you get to the end and not look at it, which is what I did. And I came along, and Laurie's copyist came along exactly on the day before the session, and he said, have you got the stuff? I said, here it is. I said, does it look all right? He said, looks right to me. All right, see you at the session. That's how it was. I was very fast, and I also remember getting to Elstree, and Laurie Johnson, who was the senior composer there, had been very well thought of and everything. He put me onto the rostrum to conduct, and the band, they were all the top session players in London. And he said, you know how he's been playing Hammond organ for us and a bit of vibraphone, and he's now taking over from me to write the series and conduct you. And there was a like, what? You know, huge, but everybody was amazed because I looked so young, and they thought, why? And he said, Laurie says, I'm so busy with this show at Drury Lane, and I'm sure you'll enjoy working with her. And I remember I said, one M1, and we started into it. I conducted until 1 o'clock for lunch, and then I always remember I shut the score, and I said, lunch, gentlemen, and they all stood up and clapped, which I've never seen in any recording sessions before or since. It's something you don't do, but they couldn't believe I could have just taken it over from Laurie without a wrinkle. So that's how I came to do that.
Could we have a bit of the Avengers theme that you did?
Well,
if that's okay.
The theme of that's not me, though. That's Laurie. But
you were able to put your own spin on it a little bit in terms of
yeah,
how you used
I
it in
would
the
need to
episodes.
yes. I'll have to think about that. I have to, or dig some manuscripts out for you.
Yeah. Do you have a favourite score you did, an episode that comes to mind, or a favourite sort of
Could
scene?
we pause for a minute?
Oh yeah, yes, let's pause, yeah.
Now then, you can see on here my wildest dream. Almost in.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you what they are. My wildest dream.
Yeah.
Whoever shot poor George.
Oblique
stroke XR40.
Yeah.
All done with mirrors. Super secret cyber snatch. Game. Noon doomsday. Wish you were here. The interrogators. Take me to your leader. Who was that man I saw you with? Which one would you like?
Do you have a preference, or?
Not really. I think my wildest dream. I think that was the first.
We could have, yes. I mean,
let's try. Let's try a bit of that. Yeah. Yeah. So, would you like to record this?
Oh yes, let's.
Are you running?
Oh yeah, still running. Yep.
Oh, sorry.
So.
Herbie Flowers on bass. Sorry. Yeah, that's Q1 from my wildest dream.
And it's a great episode, that, isn't it? And it's sort
Yeah.
of, you're setting up the sort of nightmarish quality, aren't you, of that? And it's quite sort of dark piece of music.
Yeah, it's quite scary.
Yeah.
It's meant to be.
Yeah. Do you think the Linda Thorson series did have a bit more of a darker tone than maybe some of the Anna Rigg episodes?
Well, I wasn't consulted about it personally.
Yeah.
I was just presented with what they've done, and I think Laurie was. I mean, he was pretty scared of me taking it over, but because it had been his pet baby for years, and he'd given birth to it all, and there's somebody else. But he said, you do what you think is best and fits the music, but if you can, so that it sounds like it could have been written by me, it's sort of integral part of the Avengers. So that's whether it was more dramatic. I happen to think that particular track could be more dramatic than some of Laurie's.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's quite a good one. Would you like to hear another?
Oh, yes, please.
Let's get it.
Perhaps,
This is much better. They don't really sound much on the piano anyway, you know. So this is far the best way. Not from we want from another
Yes.
episode.
We've got the main title from Whoever Shot Paul George oblique stroke XR40. That's track 6.
Good title, what?
Well, they were all great titles, weren't they? The Avengers.
They just.
Oh.
Two bass.
Wonderful, yeah.
Yeah, that's total. That'll be the title music for
The title, yeah, main titles for
Whoever Shot Poor George.
Yeah. And again, that's quite a dark bit of music as well, isn't it?
It's
In
scary.
tone. Yeah.
I do a lot of that. I really play that. Really jars on you.
Hmm.
Do you want another one or?
Yes, well, why not?
All Done with-
All Done with Mirrors, yes. That would be. Well, have the main title again. That's track
Yeah.
7. lovely.
So
So,
that's
certainly, they're all quite dark, aren't they? Really, I think sort of
they're meant to be dark. Yes,
yeah.
yes. Scare old ladies out of their sitting
But probably would actually.
rooms. Yeah. So no, so that's actually more to the point to listen to than a piano version, because all the colour and the fear is all in the instrument.
Yeah. Would the episode directors have much input in the music that you did?
No.
No.
There was one director I got friendly with. Terry Nation, I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Clements.
As you mentioned, Terry Nation. What was Terry Nation like?
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that name?
Well, I've got the list of directors here. All Demo Mirrors was Ray Austin who directed.
Ray Austin.
Demo Mirrors, and I've done events with Ray in the past, and I told him I was seeing you today, so he just wanted me to say hello on his behalf.
Oh right, yeah, I got him here. Ray Austin, yeah. Is that what you said?
Yeah, Ray Austin.
Ray Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, he's still going.
And then John Howe.
John, I think
Huff.
Huff. I think it's pronounced Huff. Yeah.
Screen Tony Williamson.
Yeah.
That was Terry Nation. He was well known.
Mm-hmm.
Director Peter Sykes. Wish we had Tony Williamson, John Chaffee, Richard Harrison, Brian Clemens. That was Interrogators. And Take Me to Your Leader. That was Terry Nation again.
And Charles Crichton did the Interrogators. Directed that one.
Yes, Charles Crichton. I don't know who Richard Harris did the screenplay, but it's not the Richard Harris.
Oh no,
It's
not
a
the.
Richard Harris.
Yes, I think Richard Harris is still alive, but when you try and track down people, of course, you put Richard Harris in, of course, you know, the wrong one comes up.
Brian Clemens, I remember. No, there's one guy. Davidson. No, I think you're doing pretty well with all that, aren't you? Do you want any more?
Want
to hear any more of those?
Yes, absolutely.
What game Noon Doomsday?
Well, on this particular disc, we have Wish You Were Here, The Interrogators, Super Secret Cyber Snatch Game.
Right.
I think that's one. So I don't know whether there's.
Well, you choose one.
Oh, this sounds quite interesting. On this particular disc, maybe Super Secret Cyber Snatch Action Sequence 14. That might be quite interesting.
Director John Howe. That's a yacht film. Oh, that sounds suspiciously like me. Huh.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Quite interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in that one, isn't
Yeah.
there? In terms of how many players you had, in terms of, was it quite a small orchestra you had? Or?
Yeah, it was. I found a list of just before we started. Now, it was roughly, I think, 2 flutes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, 3 trumpets, 4 horns, 2 trombones, tuba, 2 tune percussion, and keyboard, celeste, organ. Yeah, that's it. So it's also about 15, 16 people. It varied.
Yeah.
Some of them slightly less. But roughly, that's the lineup.
Which I suppose is pretty good for a TV sort of budget, you know, in terms of.
Yeah, I mean, I was allowed after the first one. I was allowed a pretty good budget for it because it had gone well on my wildest dream, and so I didn't have to really worry about trying to make it smaller to save money. Anyway, they were making a fortune with the show. It was going all over the world at that time.
Oh yes, it was one of the most popular shows, wasn't it, at the time, and particularly it cracked America the year before.
Yeah. So that we can keep going on with this. Do you want to hear anything else?
Well, maybe perhaps we could have some of this too, if that's okay. Yes, just trying to think.
Anything take your fancy?
Well, I just thought on this particular disc, so we've got Doomsday, of course, which has a Western.
Yeah,
that may be quite interesting to talk about.
That shook the boat, actually.
Yeah, that's.
I can remember.
22.
I can remember Laurie and the head of production coming in. What the hell are you doing? This isn't a Western. I said, it is a Western.
Yes.
That's exactly what it is. I'm doing. Yes, right. I'm doing an Avengers Western.
Yeah.
So let's hear that. That'd be good. It's quite spooky, though. And I see the. Is this 22? That's a good cue.
Yeah, it's great stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, were you a big fan of westerns? Was that easy to?
Not more
No.
unduly than anybody else. No, I liked good westerns. Um, I'd always actually wanted to try and score a western.
Yeah.
It's particularly the home of the American composer in LA. They don't let anybody in to write for westerns, but I slipped in here.
Yeah.
Because I'm taking it off. Yeah. So no, it's a particular sort of spare sound that westerns have, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you think I got it.
Oh yeah, there's certainly a love of westerns that comes through in that particular episode score. Yeah.
Do another one.
Yeah. Yes.
Carry on, Chris. You're doing a great job. What's next?
I think Noon to Doomsday is the last one on there.
This is another western one.
Yeah, this is the part of the episode. Yeah. This is nice.
So, I get this from somewhere. Or no, I wrote this. What's this called? Death by Bullfire. No, is it?
That 23.
Thousands of Border. Quite the tunes. So. No, it was my great grandmother. Stanley not Stan Moderate.
Ah. Yeah.
Great London. Perfect. That's I think he's John McDonald. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Excellent.
a great track, isn't
It
it?
is, yeah. Yeah, I think you could have definitely done a good western. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many instruments do you play, Howard?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I played piano and organ
Mhm.
and flute.
Yeah.
And in my time, the violin
Mhm.
and the ocarina. That's about it. Yeah. Flute, I play quite. I really piano is my real instrument.
Does the name John Scott mean anything to you?
Yes.
Do you remember much about John Scott? 'Cause I believe he passed away a few years ago, but I don't think
Yeah.
it was reported, so sadly. But
Remind me, what did he?
I think on this one he did the flute and the piccolo, if I'm pronouncing
Right.
it correctly. Yeah.
Yeah.
For the main theme particularly.
Oh, that was him on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well then there was another flautist called Derek Grossmith. You may have come across. I think he was second flute.
Right. Yeah.
John Scott was a sort of prize solo flute. Yeah.
Yeah, I met him at an event 6 or 7 years ago now, and he was a lovely guy to talk to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perhaps we could just touch on some of the figures in the Avengers world. So you mentioned Brian Clemens briefly, but what was Brian like? How much input did he have? How involved was he when it came to music?
Well, Brian Clemens was one of the producers, and he was quite hands-on.
Yeah.
But he didn't interfere with the music, but he'd always come and say hello when we were recording, and I'd see him in the lunchroom, and nice guy.
How about Albert Fennell?
Albert Fennell also. Now, what did he do?
He was the producer, but it was more sort of the silent producer. He was more in the background.
Yeah.
Brian was, I think, more the face of the Avengers, and I think Albert was the one that
Fennell
tends to be forgotten a little bit.
I've got here actually. I just go through them actually. Just have a look.
Yeah.
They're like My Wildest Dream, Robert Foist and Philip Irving.
Yeah.
Whoever shot Poor George, Cyril Frankel, and Tony Williamson.
Yeah, he did a lot of what we consider to be cult TV scripts back in those days. Yeah.
Yeah, he did the script. All done with Mirrors director Ray Austin.
I did an event with Ray Austin over Zoom for All Done with Mirrors, and it is his favourite of his. Cause
is it really?
He did a number of Avengers and New Avengers, and All Done with Mirrors was his all-time favourite.
That's his favourite.
and he was very complimentary about the music as well. So I think he was quite excited that I was seeing
I
him
never
today.
met him.
To,
Oh well,
yeah.
that's amazing. Well, give him my love if you see him, and tell him to give me a ring.
Oh yeah, yes, I will.
Ask him.
Yes.
Right. Then Super Secret Cipher Snatch, director John Huff.
Yep.
Script Tony Williamson. Don't remember either of them. Game, as we've said, Richard Harris, and director Robert Foist.
I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce it either.
F-U-E-S-T.
Yeah.
Then Noon Doomsday was director Peter Sykes and scriptwriter who I did know, Terry Nation, who'd also done Doctor Who.
I think he was a lot of fingers in many pies, I think,
Yeah.
at that time. And probably, I got the sense that he was almost rushed off his feet in terms of what he was writing, so he probably was in and out, I would have thought, quite quickly.
Okay, Wish You Were Here, script Tony Williamson, director Dan Chaffee.
Yep.
Don't remember. Then The Interrogators was, we said already, Richard Harris and Brian Clements.
Yeah.
Take Me to Your Lady was Terry Nation, Charles Crichton. Who Was That Man I Saw You With was Jeremy Burnham and Don Chaffee. I've got a note here about that one. Who Was That Man I Saw You With? NB, I played on Stop Me if you've heard this one.
There were these two fellas, yes.
Yeah, directed by, this is the name I've been looking for, James Hill.
Oh yes, James Hill.
James Hill, and he became a great friend of mine, and he lives just down the road in Holland Park, and we teamed up after the show and met him. I think I worked with on another series somewhere.
Oh, right.
So James Hill, scriptwriter Dennis Spooner.
Oh, Dennis Spooner's a bit like Terry Nation, very prolific in his time.
Yeah.
And sadly died far too young.
And then I've got also on that all-time producer of the whole thing is Albert Fennell, of course, who I knew very well, and Brian Clements.
Yeah.
So those were the two I met most. They would talk to me about the new film that's just been made, what they wanted from it. Was it very scary or just fairly scary, or who's it aimed at, that sort of thing. So I would get a general picture of the production from Fennell and Clements. Executive producer was Julian Wintle.
Oh yes, Julian Wintle, yes.
Who was big time. Never had time to see you.
So you didn't really have much to do with
I don't remember
Julian.
meeting him, no. Interesting, there's a little note that in the middle of, while I was doing this, I wrote arrangements of 2 songs for Laurie Johnson's musical Lock Up Your Daughters, which went on at the Drury Lane Theatre. So, I mean, that's about all the info that I've got on there.
I mean, that's brilliant. I mean, you said you did a bit on Look, Stop Me If You Told Me there were these two fellas.
Yeah, which changed its name, didn't it?
Yeah, it's got quite a long long title, that one.
Was it Whoever Shot Poor George? Oblique Stroke? No.
Yeah, that was one, and then there was Stop Me If You Told Me if you know this one, but there were these two fellas or something along, and it was that had a lot of sort of slapstick humour and music in it.
What was it? What name did it end up with?
I think that was the name. Yeah, it was quite long-winded. It was Stop if you've heard this one, but there were these two fellas, and it was basically about 2 vaudeville acts that.
Oh yeah, I do remember that
one. Yeah, because that's got the dark quality as well, but also it's quite sort of.
Who Was That Man I Saw You
playful.
With? I think it became. Or
it might have been another one.
NB, I played on Stop Me If You've Heard This One.
That's the one. Yeah.
I played on that.
Yeah.
Because that must mean that that Laurie wrote it and I played it.
Yeah.
Director James Hill,
Mm.
yes. Script Dennis Spooner. So I don't know, or I might have done a bit of writing and a bit of playing. Who knows? Like that one we heard.
Yeah. Because I think that's one of Linda Forston's favourite episodes. That particular one. How different were Brian and Albert in terms of were they quite sort of chalk and cheese as producers, or were they sort of if you recall?
Well, that's a hard question to answer.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't see much of the producers. I was one time, the minute you got in the studio, you were talking to musicians about have they brought their bass over with them, and
Yeah.
can they double on piccolo trumpet and all this. So one didn't speak much to the overall producers of the show, who really, as in most television, that they regard the adding of music as a post-production experience that you entrust to somebody who they believe will look after the show in the way they want. And the only time they would really come and talk to you is if you didn't do that.
Right. Yeah.
When they'd say, write it again. But fortunately I didn't ever have that.
Were you kind of sort of the last element to come together on the post production of the Avengers in terms of would the sound effects be already there, or would you kind of think, well, I've got to leave space for this or that, or how does it kind of work?
Most of the sound effects would be there.
Yeah.
I mean, you needed them, otherwise you'd be trying to match a piano against a steam engine or something.
So you knew what you had to kind of get out of the way of,
yes,
if you like.
Yeah.
And I think what's always quite interesting when it comes to TV and film scores is the score, but also the scenes that aren't scored. You know, the letting certain action sequences play and then the music sort of kicks in at a certain point. How do you approach that in terms of knowing, is it very tempting to overscore, or how do you kind of work that balance?
In fact, being a big film buff and being very fond of film music, would in some cases say, I don't think this needs any music.
Yeah.
And the normal response you'd get from a producer was, oh, it's got to have music.
Yeah.
I said, well, not everything does. Some pieces work, especially spine-chilling episodes. If you've had some huge positive noise and you suddenly go to dead silence and darkness, and you perhaps hear somebody breathing, I mean that is much more scary than anything you could write.
Yeah, yeah. Just sort of finish off on the Avengers. Before we started going, you played the sort of Avengers love theme. The Tower theme, I suppose you might have said. Could we have that to finish off this particular section?
Let me see if I know it actually.
Yeah.
No, it's wrong key. You
That's
could
lovely.
take the second time round when I got it right.
No, that's lovely. And how does the Avengers sit in your body of work? Is it something you remain very proud of?
Well, I'm delighted to be reminded of it
Yeah.
by yourself. It's such a long time ago. As you know, I could hardly remember writing it. But write it I did. It's gradually come back to me. It's been exciting stuff, and see if I can remember.
Yeah.
But I think the Avengers took me up a step because, in a way, up to that point I'd been a pianist, and I'd suddenly got fed up with being a concert pianist, and I first of all was a cinema projectionist after I left the Academy. You may know that, and I worked at the National Film Theatre, and I made an experimental film there, which was actually run at the NFT, called A Few Days, and it did quite well. But I realised I wasn't going to get any further there, and one day I suddenly thought, I've just, all I want to do is play the piano again, and I thought, where can I play? I want to play every night, if possible all night. So I thought, the only place I can do that is in a nightclub or a pub. So I immediately got a job in a pub and I was very successful at it, and I got promoted around town until I became the pianist at Talk of the Town, which was the best piano job in London. And we played for really big stars, and I played, for instance, for Eartha Kitt, I remember, who was absolutely delightful to talk to, and all sorts of, but big time singers, and I was doing that, and in fact this is quite a funny story. One day I'd gone out to lunch with the percussion section, and we'd gone to a rather good Soho restaurant, and I got terribly bad indigestion and I came back for a live performance on stage at the Talk of the Town to go to worldwide, and as I started the piano introduction to the theme, and it was for a very big Carol, girl singer, Lisa, can't remember. It might have been Eartha Kitt for it actually put down Eartha Kitt. Anyway, I suddenly found I was going to be violently sick, and I ran off the stage right down to lower floor and where the conveniences were. And I was violently sick. Came back on the stage and said, producer said, "How dare you walk off?" I said, "I'm terribly sorry, I've been sick." He said, "Well, you're lucky," he said, "because that was only a trial run, and we are now going for a take. And this is going on. This is going out worldwide. So don't get sick again." I said, "I promise I won't." So I sat down. I said, and then I went, "Oh," and I ran. I ran, and I was violently sick again. And I came back onto the stage, and this was going out on live television, and he said, "You're fired, Blake, don't ever come back on my set again." So, anyway, this story got to Bernard Herman, and he rang, he thought it was terribly funny, and he rang up and he said, "I hear you're out of a job." So I said, "Yeah," I said, "That's the end of my piano playing career." And he said, that's when he said to me, he said, "Well, I've just been offered this writing job up in Elstree of the Avengers." He said, "Would you like to do that?" I said, "Don't you want to do it?" He said, "I wouldn't know how to." "You do it." So that's how I got the Avengers.
Oh, that's well thought. What's your favourite project of your career? Is it hard to? I suppose it's quite hard to sort of say what your favourite is, but
gosh. Well, probably for me was being asked to write a piano concerto for Princess Diana.
I did want to ask you about that. Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, that was for her birthday, her 30th birthday, and it was commissioned by the Philharmonia Orchestra, who were then and probably now the best orchestra in London. So it was a very good commission, and I was a great fan of Princess Diana anyway, and so that was a great piece to play. I had no intention of playing the piano because they'd offered me a very famous Evgeny Kissin had said he would play it. But when he saw the score, he said, "This is much too difficult for me to learn. I haven't got the time. I can't do it." So I said, "Well, who are you going to get?" And the director of the Philharmonia said, "Well," he said, "the boys all say you can play it." Boys meaning the members of the orchestra. I said, "How do they know?" People know what you can do. So I was talking to, would I play the piano? I said, "Well, I'm going to have to cancel a lot of jobs because I'm going to I haven't practiced properly for about 10 years." Right. But for Princess Diana, so I got back and I started practicing 3 hours a day, and I got the piano concerto right back under my fingers, and I think it's the greatest moment in my life, actually. That I remember going to I got the star dressing room at the festival hall, and it said Howard Blake, composer on it. And I put Ann Pianist. And I went in there and I lay down on a very nice couch there, and I thought I'll think the whole thing through so that I don't have a memory lapse. And I lay down there and I could not for the life of me remember how it started. So I thought, Blake, you just have to trust in God and get out there and play and it will come back to you. So I went to sleep for a few minutes. And they said, "You're on stage." And I was at that moment, and I see Princess Diana up in the royal box on her own, which was sort of sad, but she'd already parted from her husband Charles. Yeah. This was about 1991, I think.
Yeah, 91. I've got it in my mind.
Yes, oh good, yes. And anyway, and I got on the stage and I sat down and I looked around at everybody, and every member of the orchestra smiled at me. They were all on my side. And I remember sitting down. This is how it starts. And that was my little theme. That was Diana's theme. She was so gentle and happy. And that's what the concerto was. And at the end, I was actually with my wife at that time, the first wife, and I introduced her to the director of the concert of the Philharmonia. I said, "This is my wife," and I said, I'd like to take her up to meet Princess. She'd love to meet Princess Diana. She's got especially dressed up for it. And he said, "I don't think Princess Diana would particularly want to meet your wife." So anyway, I took my wife anyway, and I was introduced to Princess Diana, and she was absolutely delightful, and she loved the concerto. And that was a very big moment in my life, yes.
And I can't leave without sort of mentioning the Snowman. Of course, it's the definitive.
I don't think I've heard of that one.
I mean, if people don't necessarily know you by name, you mention the Snowman, and they know, even if they're quite young, you know, they'll know the Snowman.
Where was that introduction you found this morning?
On the piano there.
It was a really good. Was it in there still? Still
it's like in the second near the top of the second column.
Still walking in the air after 40 years. This is recent. I can't check this up. Who is it? It's from
that's-
FT, isn't it?
That's 18th December 2022.
Oh, what? There's a very... The Life of a Song, is it that down the bottom?
No. It's
This one?
Yeah.
no, it's a very concise summation.
Could you find... I can't find it.
Yeah, there's just
I can't see it, Crystal.
that very compact paragraph.
Rather well,
about how it came about.
Max, you,
I'll to read it if you like.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
React to that. I said I would like to develop it into a half-hour animation film with no dialogue, says Blake. We took the idea to Jeremy Isaacs, who was about to launch Channel 4, and he thought it was brilliant. I wrote the score in about 3 weeks. Some friends thought that tune should have some words put to it, and I decided it should be sung by a boy soprano. St Paul's Cathedral lined up 4 boys from the choir, and I chose Peter Rorty.
Yes, that's a very pocket version of it, yeah.
And I suppose it's one of those things you didn't have any idea would have the life that it sort of, had.
No, I just... but I was, yes, I was shown actually just a very short snippet of film, about 7 seconds of film. And then from that I took that home and wrote a Walking in the Air against it, and then I took that back and I said, I think you can have this tune, but you've got to make a complete half-hour film with no dialogue, otherwise you can't have it. Because it's something I wanted to do all my life. Is a film with just music. And so John Coates, the producer, he said, I don't think that Jeremy Isaacs at Channel 4, I don't think he'll accept that. He'll want dialogue. But in fact, I said, well, try it. Show it to him. So he showed the 7 minutes, and Jeremy Isaacs came back the same day and said, that will be brilliant, we'll do it. And that's something that very rarely happens in the film world. They've got certain procedures of what they do and what they don't do. Making films without dialogue doesn't come into their categories at all. So it breaks a lot of rules, and it is possibly the most successful animation film in the world at the moment.
Yeah.
So Jeremy Isaacs and I were right, weren't we?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Could I have a small excerpt on the piano of Snowman? Would that be okay?
I don't think I can remember it. Yes, I can.
Thank you very much. That's lovely. Thank you, Helen, so
Great.
much. That's lovely. Thank you. Well, I think it's probably a lovely place to end, unless there's anything you wanted to add before we.
I'm exhausted.
You've got a very rare C minor version of Walking in the Air.
Yeah, it's a lovely rendition of it. Yeah,
It
that
should
was
have
beautiful.
been in D.
D is normal, but there's a concert version in C sharp minor. But you went for C this time.
Yes, the C sharp minor was done by Ashkenazi, played it in C sharp minor, and I don't know why he thought it some obscure reason I don't know, but originally it was written in D minor.
Too easy to play in D.
Yes, I think it was in D minor in the
Yeah,
original.
just D minor.
Yeah.
I think it's lovely in any key. So it's.
Let me see what I can find for you.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you very much. Well, thank you for talking to me in the first place and giving me so much of your time as well. It's very much appreciated.
Oh, well, I'm sorry I couldn't find various things, but the longer time it goes back, the harder it is to find things. You know, you think, I know it's in here somewhere. But
Well, I'm not half as organised in my house. So,
right.
So to find the right sort of years, I think that's.
Good. Anyway, I hope you got a sort of picture of me.
Oh, a really good one. Yeah, it's a nice sort of covers. The
Right.
Avengers, but of course the other stuff as well. So that was,
Yeah.
And you got one of those careers. We could just spend days, couldn't we, sort of talking about things. But
Unbelievable number of things I've done really. You know, I've on the web I've got a what do you call it, a biography.
oh, it's on your
Yeah,
website.
you can.
Yeah.
That's pretty. It deals with most things, you know. So you can sometimes look things up there. But
Yeah.
if you need anything else, give me a ring.
Oh, I will. That's
All
great.
right.
Thank you very much indeed.
It's been a pleasure.